I have a question for you. How many of you have ever played tic-tac-toe? If you're like me, you have, right? And you probably played it as a kid. But let's say you and I decide to play tic-tac-toe and we play 9 games and I win them all, right? And then I say, do you want to play a 10th game? I mean, come on, it's going to be fun. And what are you thinking? Like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm fine. But let's just say I talk you into a 10th game, right? I talk you into playing that one more game, and in that game, you win. Like, now how do you feel, right? The first 9, you're feeling icky. You feel like you're ready to give up. It's too much. Can't do it. Not worth it. Feels awful. But the 10th time, you win. And then you're like, all right, I can do this. That is not unlike us in the world of work. We are working nonstop, 24/7, and losing at the game of work and losing sometimes at the game of life because we have so much going on. So today in the Leadership Edit, we're going to talk about how to deal with those first 9 games, to not give up, but then figure out how to get our games to be like the 10th one. Welcome to the Leadership Edit. Welcome to the Leadership Edit. I'm so grateful that you're spending time together with me to work on you and your leadership. We're going to have a chance to have a little fun, think about what's working, what's not working, and maybe see if we can get some good edits in there to help your day go easier and be more rewarding. So earlier I was talking about tic-tac-toe, and the truth of the matter is, when you think about your to-do list, right? Let's say you have, I don't know, write it down. You probably have 10, 30, 40 things on your to-do list each day. Right? Let's say you have 30 items, and let's say at the end of the day, you have 27 accomplished. Really good, great job. But when you lay down to bed at night and you look up at the ceiling, what is it that you're thinking about? Well, if you're like most people, you're thinking about the 3 things that you didn't get accomplished. And here's the crazy thing. You're not crazy. The truth is there's research about that fact, the fact that you think of the 3 things you haven't accomplished, and it's actually called the Kismark effect. Our brains are wired to look at what we've done and say, that was good, but if you're going to be better next time, here's what else you should do. So we inadvertently, even though we've done 27 things, we are critical of ourselves, most likely, of the 3 we didn't accomplish because we want the next day to be better. But here's the tricky thing. It's like the tic-tac-toe game because the next day there are 30 more things or maybe 40 things. And so we do the game again and we play the tic-tac-toe game and let's say we get 35 things done the next day. We're still thinking about the 5 that we didn't get done, right? So that actually doesn't allow our brain to have dopamine. It tells us we've lost. We've lost the game of tic-tac-toe. We've lost the game of being effective and getting our work done. And so it's demoralizing. And so we tend to feel symptoms of being tired, being exhausted, feeling bad about ourselves, maybe feeling a little depressed, feeling a little hopeless, or saying, hey, I'm going to work harder, I'm going to work more. I'm going to give more to work and less to my family, less to my health, less to my hobbies. And all of those decisions in the short term might get us a glimpse of a dopamine effect of feeling like, yeah, I won at the game, I won. That's that dopamine adrenaline you get that says, you're doing this, you got this. We'll get a glimpse of it, but then the next day it starts over again. So as I've been working with leaders throughout the country over the last 20 years as an executive coach, I've watched these leaders who are brilliant, who get so much accomplished, and they do so much, and yet even they will end their day feeling like, man, I just didn't get all the stuff done I need to, and I just worry that I'm not a successful leader. And watching these great leaders who many of you, if you knew who they were, would say, yeah, they're a great leader, knowing that they feel that way, it was insightful to me to realize that we all feel that way at some point. And what can we do about it? So that's really where less is more came out of, and the Leadership Edit is the foundation of, because when you think about the 24/7 culture we have of go, 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 24/7 meetings, emails and texts all the time, there isn't a lot of downtime, and there's more to do than ever before. And there isn't as much time to edit out what doesn't belong so that we can actually win. And so what I started doing with my clients is asking them to ask 3 questions. And these are the 3 questions that I would ask all of us to take a minute to think about now and to be able to look at for this week. Right? So the first question is, what is the most important thing I can do? Right? And so when you think about all the work on your plate, out of all the things that you're looking at, on that list, which of those things are important? Not the things that are like, yeah, I want to sharpen my pencils today. Like, that's good, but it isn't necessarily the most important thing you can do. And then the second question is, what's the most impactful thing you can do, right? So overall, there are ways you can get work accomplished, but there are ways that you can do it in a more impactful way versus less. And I'm going to give an example here in a moment. And the third question is, what is the thing that can be done by only me, right? So as leaders, we often are doing things that maybe we've done historically in our careers or that our people are doing. We're helping them out with their work. But those aren't necessarily the things that only we can do. They can be doing those things. So when we look at the overall example of the leadership edit and the 3 questions, here's an example, all right? Early on when I was discovering this philosophy, I was working with a senior salesperson. He was the head of sales. And I was setting up my next executive coach session with him. And he said, well, I can't meet with you for about 6 or 7 weeks. And I thought, wow, 6 or 7 weeks, what's going on? And he said, well, actually, we're having supply issues. And our production person and supply person didn't order enough of the right product for us. So we're not able to make our product for our customers. And so our salespeople are out in the field and they're trying to keep their foot in the door. And so I'm traveling to all these big clients and I'm trying to help them as the head of sales to keep that sale open. And I thought to myself, that's really curious. And so I asked him to tell me more about that. And I said, tell me about your team. And he had 3 area managers that were experienced and they were his next in command, his VPs. And I said, so you have these 3 people and then you have 60 people out in the field. And you're telling me that you're going to go into the field and help all these individual sales to try to keep the sales effective and open. Yep, okay, got it. So when we look at that in terms of thinking, what's the most important thing he could do? What's the most impactful thing he can do? And what can be done by only him? It really helped us shape where he could spend his time, right? Because what we realized is that his direct reports, having one-on-ones with his direct reports is something that only he can do. So if you have direct reports, make your one-on-ones happen. Absolutely do not cancel your one-on-ones. No one else can be the leader of your people besides you. This also goes for parenting. If you're the parent, spend time with your kids if you can. Like, you're the parent, right? It's important. So when we think about the leadership piece and we think about the most important thing we can do and the most impactful thing we can do, the truth is we know that in this case, he could spend time with those area managers one-on-ones, and he could help them figure out how to keep their door open, how to keep his foot in the door, their foot in the door with the salespeople. And what that would do would allow him to stay in the corporate office. And we said to ourselves, well, what's the most impactful thing you can do? So I'm going to meet with my direct reports, but then I'm also going to sit at the table, at the executive table that only he also had a spot for. And at that executive table, he could start working with the other leaders in the team to figure out how to fix the supply chain issue, right? Because that's what the people in the field really need. They needed him to be at the table fixing the strategic problem. That was the most important and impactful. That was the most impactful thing he could do because it helped all of them that only he could do, right? So those 3 questions really are a bit of a litmus test for us when we're looking at our day and all the things on our plates to be able to say, am I really working on the things that are going to make a difference? And what I've learned is that if we do that, if we have that list, it's going to be shorter. There are going to be fewer things on it because they're going to be the really important things. And here's the great part. If you can accomplish those things on the list, you actually will lay down at night and feel like you've accomplished what's important. You'll have a bit of that dopamine effect. You'll have a chance to take a deep breath and feel like, oh man, I did get done what I needed. I feel good. And that actually will motivate you for the next day to do it again and get more accomplished of the right things. So it really has a cyclical and multiplier effect if we start at the beginning of what's most important, okay? And what's impactful and what can be done by only you. So next, then, after you've thought about those things, the truth of the matter is there's still all these other things on your plate. So with a lot of my clients, I do what I call a plate activity, and I have them write it all down. And then I have them circle the things that are important and impactful that can be done by only them. And I have them X off things that can be delegated, that can be stopped, that aren't urgent. And I also have a set of questions that in our next podcast down the road, we can go through those together so you can do your own little leadership edit of your own plate. So we'll absolutely do that. But for now, I want to make sure we're thinking about those 3 questions and we're giving ourselves a chance to just more start being aware of the things we're spending time on and the fact that they may or may not be the most important, impactful things that could be done by only you. Okay. All right. So within that, what we look at is the idea of those 3 questions apply to 2 categories, right? We're talking about the leadership edit, and we're mostly talking about professional for sure. But obviously our whole selves come to work, and also as a coach I've learned that people have their whole selves. They are personal and professional. So you can look at these questions in the personal and professional models because they do apply, right? And so the professional is your meetings, your strategy, your team, your, I would say, self, team, company, right? Always self, team, company. And certainly personal is yourself, your family, and then others in your life. So if you look at it through those 3 lenses, you can apply the questions to see what's going to work best for you. When we think about leadership, I was trying to add a little bit of structure into that piece. And as you know, these are things that we'll go through over time as we're together. But foundationally, there are 3 P's that we tend to filter our leadership through, right? So if we're saying this, what are the most important, impactful things that only I can do? There are 3 categories we can look at in our professional lives. We can look at the people, right? So are we focused on the right people, our direct reports, our peers, the people who are influencing in the organization? Are we spending time with them, helping them also work on the right things that are impacting the organization? Process is the second P. So are we looking at our systems and the things we're doing and not doing, and making sure that those are a good use of our time? For example, there will be a podcast down the road looking at meetings, because meetings are an epidemic. They are a challenge, and they are a time suck. They do not serve us well in most cases. But that is an example of meetings are a process. They're a process that our company follows, our organizations follow, and they're often, even within a meeting, there's a process of every meeting's 30 minutes, or it's an hour, or it's 90 minutes. And so we're going to look at that and look at ways to edit those and to get those to be effective. There's some great research about how to make those a better use of your time, but also a resource that actually helps you versus something that just all of a sudden you wake up at 8 and the next thing you know it's 5. And you've done nothing but go to meetings all day, right? So we will absolutely look at that in the future. And then the third P, right? So we talked about people, process, and then the last one is performance. And that's really a matter of, are you having wins? Are you having wins personally, for yourself, for your team, and for your organization? And just like I said earlier with the dopamine effect, the idea of getting that adrenaline to feel like we're winning the game, we want to make sure we're having moments where we win at work, that we feel good about what we're doing, and also that our team feels good about what's going forward. I was just talking with a client yesterday. I was traveling to St. Louis with a client, and one of my participants said to me, one of the managers said, gosh, what do you do if your company just keeps sending really depressing emails? And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, we just get emails over and over, like the company's not doing well, and you're all not doing enough, and you got to cut this, you got to cut that. And we hear it over and over. So in the beginning, we kept thinking, well, what can we do? Let's try harder. And so we try. And then we get the same email the next time and the next time. And I was like, wow, that process of the company sending emails, I'm not sure what their intent is. But if they think they're informing or inspiring change, they're not. So we want to make sure that our messaging to ourselves, to others, is certainly serving a purpose that's going to help us feel like we can win, right? That it's productive, that we know where we're going to. So far, we talked about the 3 questions. We've talked about personal and professional, and then we looked at the 3 Ps. So in terms of what we can do with that, we're going to think about your own self now, and to think about what it is that you're working on that is helpful and not helpful. And so when you think about your week, I'm just going to ask you to take a few minutes to think about what is something that only you can do this week, right? I know there's 3 questions. I gave you processes, a lot to think about, but what is one thing that only you can do this week? And then within that, something that's going to be impactful, that's going to make a difference to you or to the people you work with or serve, and pick that one thing and do that this week. And then I'd love to hear you share it. I'd love to have you put it in the notes. I'd love to have you send me a note. I'd love us to celebrate those things. But even if you don't send a note, make sure you do write it down. And then right before you go to bed, pull out the note and read it and say, look, this is the most important, impactful thing that only I could do, and I did it. So you can rest assured, you can pat yourself on the back, and you can sleep easy, knowing that you've done all you can do in your day to be impactful. And as we work on the leadership edit, as you continue to grow, these are the things you're going to start to feel better and better about yourself and better about being a leader. So thank you for today. Thank you for being a part of the edit. And I look forward to seeing you next time.